I've been having a ton of fun playing a very off-meta healer recently, and it got me to thinking about what's really important when healing Mythic Plus dungeons. WoW seems to have gotten increasingly meta-focused, particularly in Mythic Plus, and sometimes the classes and specs being played by top players do not translate as well to the key levels that 98% of the player base is actually doing. So in this video I want to highlight a healer that is often overlooked, but I'd argue is one of the best healers suited to carry pugs in any key where the other 4 players are not playing 100% optimally.
Who's that?
Healer. This healer has high throughput, a ranged kick on a short CD, several AoE stops, a solid defensive kit, and a wide range of cooldowns for various situations.
It's
Resto Shaman. After starting this season off as Disc Priest, which was very much the flavor of the month healer, and then inevitably slacking on pushing keys and starting to turn my attention to my army of alts, I decided to pick up Resto Shaman for the first time in quite a while, and it was an amazing breath of fresh air, and now I'm considering maining it going into Dragonflight Season 4, even though I doubt it's going to be a meta healer in Mythic Plus, but honestly, pugging keys, in my opinion, is a completely different skill set from doing organized groups on comms, and Shaman is historically one of the healers best suited for this kind of play. One of the reasons I'd rank Shaman as a great M+ pick is the style of healing. Although Shaman healing does require some setup and is not as reactive as something like Holy Priest, doesn't require a ton of ramp to get out some good throughput. If one player drops low unexpectedly, it's not as difficult to get them topped up again as it would be on a Resto Druid or a Disc Priest. Shaman also have a cooldown for every situation. Spirit Link is amazing for equalizing health bars and essentially making anyone inside invincible, and often makes some mechanics feel totally cheesed. Ancestral Guidance and Ascendance are great throughput cooldowns. Healing Tide Totem can be helpful for ticking rot damage. Primordial Wave offers a nice burst of healing on a really short CD, and Cloudburst can be really potent AoE throughput when used properly. There really isn't such a thing as a bad Shaman fight in Mythic Plus, with the only real tool that's lacking being a serious external defensive. Instead, you're left with the always up Earth Shield. Healing pugs often requires more throughput than healing a more organized group that isn't allowing much damage to come out of mobs. Not being reliant on others doing that job is part of what makes Shaman so solid. And speaking of not relying on others, Shaman's utility kit is pretty much second to none. Even though they're no longer the only healer with a kick, they still have the best healer kick in the game, with Wind Shear having a cooldown of a melee interrupt, but the benefit of being a ranged ability. You've also got Capacitor Totem and Thunder Shock as AoE stops, with the latter being on an obscenely low cooldown. After a season in Disc Priest, watching in helpless horror as my teammates weren't able to get enough kicks and stops out, it was incredibly refreshing to not only be able to contribute in this area, but often being the main contributor in mob control. And then there's the Affixes, which Shaman also has a ton of answers to. For Afflicted, Poison Cleansing Totem is almost unfair, allowing you to practically solo the entire affix with very little effort. Earth Grasp is amazing for Spiteful. For Entangled, you can take Gust of Wind, can talent into Hex for Incorporeal, and while no one has anything that can compete with Massive Spell for Bursting, Riptides and Chain Heal do as well as anything against that affix, and as a pug healer, it's great to be able to solo as many affixes as you can, and Shaman is as good as anybody in that regard. Here's another important aspect of Mythic Plus: not dying. Shaman has not typically been known as a tanky class, but I'd argue that Resto Shaman has some nice ways of keeping themselves up, a couple of which may not be readily obvious to people. Astral Shift is a really good defensive cooldown, granting 40% damage reduction on a 1.5-minute cooldown, but there's a couple other factors at play here. One is Ancestral Vigor, a talent in which your heals on yourself grant you 10% more hit points. It's worth making sure you have this on yourself before a big damage event goes out. Another being Earth Shield. You're generally going to live with Earth Shield on yourself full time, so that's basically a forever 6% damage reduction, which is also significant. You also itemize for versatility, so you're inherently building defensiveness into your character. And finally, of course, you've got Reincarnate, allowing yourself to B-res off of the group's B-res cooldown. You can even throw down an Earth Elemental for a 10% buff to your HP, Being able to grant yourself that little extra bit of HP can be the difference between living and dying on mechanics that are potentially going to kill you. Another benefit to Resto Shaman as well, and that's the fact that its healing throughput is in no way tied to its damage. While I know a lot of people enjoy that damage equal healing playstyle, it's not exactly beginner friendly or necessarily pug group friendly. Resto Shaman damage is kind of mid, but on the bright side, it's very intuitive and easy to get out. You just keep your healing rain on the ground, zap with chain lightning on AoE, and flame shock lava burst on single target. Now, there are some Resto Shaman present in the top 100 timed keys, at least at the moment, so clearly the spec has some merit, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the spec is perfect and just being overlooked because it does have its downsides. The first and most obvious one after you've played a bit is mana. I've never really understood why Blizzard makes some healers literally never even have to think about mana while others have to pay such close attention to it. But mana is definitely a thing for Resto Shaman, and while they do have some tools to work around this, honestly, the tools aren't that great. The Resurgent talent makes your critical heals refund a small amount of your mana, which is part of why you itemize for crit. And while you have things like Mana Spring and Mana Tide Totem, these are generally considered poor talents. Shaman mana would be something I kind of hope Blizzard looks at going forward, but a pretty common mistake you can correct in Resto Shaman play is not leaning too hard on Chain Heal and only using it when you've got high tide procs. Otherwise, Chain Heal can eat through your mana really fast. The other sort of missing piece to the Resto Shaman kit is a true external defensive. These always become increasingly important as you move up in key levels in Mythic Plus, and Shaman's best option is basically putting Earth Shield on someone, which is only 6% damage reduction, but does also increase the healing they take from you by 20%. It is awesome because you can have it up 100% of the time, but it doesn't provide a cooldown level of damage reduction, which is sometimes really nice to have. I'd highly recommend Resto Shaman to a couple different types of players, the first of which being new healers. The healing style is really straightforward, and the diversity of the Shaman's kit will give you experience doing all sorts of things. It's a great spec because it's very simple at its core, but has a ton of room to grow as you learn to use all the utility tools available to you. The other player I think Shaman is great for is your average run-of-the-mill pug healer. Shaman's kits can allow you to basically carry low and mid-level keys and allow you to be a huge contributor as you start to move into higher ones as well. If you're the type of person that likes to have control of what's going on, Shaman is a great healer for you because you can pretty much be active in mob control and affixes as well. So do I think Shaman will gain some ground in the Mythic Plus meta in Season 4? Honestly, probably not. They'll get an improved tier set, but so will everyone, and none of the Shaman tier sets have really blown me away this expansion anyway. I think Shaman will continue to be really good healer for pugs, but its rather low damage potential and mana struggles probably going to keep it in the mid tiers, but that's the whole point of this video, guys. I think Shaman is a really good healer for a lot of people that play Mythic Plus in this game, and if you're maybe not excited with how some of the top tier stuff plays and the reality of your pug groups, I'd really recommend giving it a try. Love to hear your guys' thoughts about Resto Shaman in the comments, guys, and if you want to see Resto Shaman played, you can come check out my stream Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 9 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube. We have a great community, lots of fun. Hope to see you there sometime. Till next time, guys, happy healing.